Hi, Hyperloop Talks is a social media event to highlight the experiences of individuals in the Hyperloop community, organized by Canadian Hyperloop Conference, which we'll be referring to as CHC. And today I'm talking with Ben and Adam. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Ben, do you want to go first?
Yeah, so I'm Ben Busca. I'm going into my 4A term of civil engineering in the summer. I've been on the team for about 8 terms now on the infrastructure team, and I've been leading it for about 5 or 6 terms now.
Cool. And my name is Adam Rosenblum. I'm also one of the infrastructure leads. I go to the University of Waterloo. I'm in my 3A term, so 3rd year of civil engineering. And I've been on the team since probably September 2020.
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys. How did you guys get involved with Hyperloop?
You want to go first?
Sure. So I heard about the team when I was in 1st year. So back before COVID, I had seen something on like Instagram or something like that about this Hyperloop team. And I'd heard a bunch of things about the Hyperloop, but didn't really know too much about it and didn't realize that it was something that Waterloo had a team for. So through that, I found the website, applied, and started in my 2nd year. And the rest is history.
For me, I was interviewing for a job that I needed more experience in. So I thought I would join a design team, hoping that would help my chances. So when I was looking up the design teams, I saw Waterloop, and I knew a little bit about Hyperloop already because I was interested in Elon Musk's work with it. And so I was like, okay, you know what, I'll join this team because they have an infrastructure division. And then that's how I started.
How did you guys get involved with the Waterloop infrastructure team? It's kind of related.
Yeah. Sure. So I can go first. So yeah, I mean, the main reason why I was interested in joining Waterloop was because as a civil engineering student, I mean, a lot of the design teams that you see are more geared towards mechanical and electrical and stuff like that. But I saw that there was an infrastructure team, and at Waterloop, and I guess the team built tracks and stuff like that. So I thought that was like a really good opportunity to get into something interesting that I found really cool. While also keeping it like pretty related to my degree, and also kind of using it as a good experience for my applications for the future.
Yeah, honestly, that's kind of the same thing. I knew I wanted to join a design team, but a lot of them weren't really in my wheelhouse for, everything related to my program and some of my skills and stuff like that. So when I saw the infrastructure team, it just seemed something that would fit well with the career path I want to go down, which is structural engineering. So that's what made me join the infrastructure team.
Thanks for answering. What attracted you to Hyperloop, and are these reasons still relevant?
Sure. Do you want to go for it?
What's that?
Do you want to go for it first?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things about Hyperloop that I liked in general was that it's kind of like a groundbreaking, innovative mode of transportation, connecting large distances with short amount of time. That's something that isn't really utilized in Western culture as it is in Eastern cultures and stuff like that. And I think it's something we need. The whole concept of Hyperloop seems to be more efficient and more environmentally friendly than other modes of transportation, and also helps like traffic in general. So just like all those applications, and it's just super innovative, and so that's just kind of what attracted me to it. And I think it still does because we're doing a lot of work with the track and those kind of things, and we've just seen a real progression. And so as we're getting closer to bigger and better things, it feels more real,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think a lot of the same reasons for me. Yeah, I grew up in Calgary in the West, and I mean, even compared to the East Coast in Ontario, there's like no other modes other than either you're driving places or maybe you're flying places. And I mean, anyone who's sat in traffic and just, I'm sure everyone who sat in traffic before just knows that there's got to be a better way. And the truth is that in a lot of other countries, there are better ways. Like in Europe, in Asia, even in places in South America, high-speed rail is pretty widespread and it's very effective at kind of getting that middle ground between those trips that are under like 100 miles that would be done by a car and those ones that are well over like 300-400 that would be done by plane. So even though North America didn't really jump on the high-speed rail train, no pun intended, I mean, I hope that the next mode, which may be Hyperloop, hopefully, I think that maybe North America is in a spot to lead that transition. And in terms of it still being relevant, yeah, I'd say absolutely. I mean, we all know how big of a deal sustainability is right now. There was the Paris, or not Paris, there were the climate agreements just in Glasgow a couple of months ago. And we all saw that a lot needs to be done, and getting rid of that 25% of emissions that come from the transportation sector is going to be big. And a lot of that comes from car traffic. So yeah, very relevant.
Yeah, that's true. So how did you guys get your current position in Hyperloop?
Sure. I'll say first. So yeah, I was on the team as a member, and so I actually started when Ben was the lead. I think it was his first term as the lead, maybe his second. But I was a member for about a full year, so 3 terms. And I kind of made sure to, like, it was something I was really interested in. So I made sure to step up and take on tasks when things were being delegated, and trying to like be a part of the conversation with kind of the other people on the team. And from there, yeah, they came to me and asked if I wanted to join as lead, and I said, yeah.
What about you, Ben?
I think I joined the team when infrastructure had only been created like 2 terms prior. So the lead at that time was graduating and someone had to take over. And so I was, oh, I'll do it. I would like to do that. And I was the only one, so I kind of got in like that, but it was good. And I love the role. I've been on it for a long time now. And then, yeah, that's how I'm in my role.
Well, moving on to more in-depth questions about your experience. I know you guys have a big event coming up at Waterloop to test the track you guys made. So can you talk a little bit about the Waterloop test track for audiences who don't know about it?
Why don't you start it, because
Sure.
you were there at the beginning.
So the Waterloop test track is something we're calling a semi-permanent design, because opposed to the SpaceX track, which is a tube that has an I-beam in the center, ours will just be I-beam on concrete blocks that are spaced out periodically. And it creates this sort of modular design that we can assemble quickly and disassemble just as fast. Whereas all the other test tracks that are out there right now are permanent, which costs a lot more money and requires a lot more stuff to do with like the land, because you can't just plop something down there that's permanent. This track is going to be 100 meters to start, and we're going to increase it to 225 meters, which we think will give us just an edge in designing Hyperloop technology, because we haven't had a test track before.
Yeah, and just add onto that, like it's been a project that started even before I started on the team. That Ben was like a big part of the design phase. And when I joined in September 2020, most of kind of the design had been figured out. So then at that point, the challenge really was trying to figure out a location where we could put it. So, I mean, Ben was talking about how it's semi-permanent, which is definitely pretty key, because getting permission to put your track somewhere permanently is much more difficult than just for a couple of years. But it turned out to be quite the challenge nonetheless. So it took quite a while. We had to do a lot of reports about how our track would impact the site. We had to do all of our own procurement. Our business team helped a lot with getting some funding, some capital to build it. And yeah, and then now we're kind of at the point where it's pretty much all been sorted out. So we just gotta build it.
That's good. Well, talking about like your difficulties, what are some that you actually faced during the designing or building the track?
The single greatest difficulty was just finding a place to put the track. I'm sure you can imagine trying to find somebody who's willing to let a bunch of students place structure that's over 100 meters long somewhere. It's not easy, you know. Nobody wants that anywhere. So we went through multiple locations. We got to the point where we were just talking back and forth, and then we thought it was going to work, and then it didn't. For so many parties, we worked with the region of Waterloo, the University of Waterloo. We talked to some private entities, and then now finally we got the airport, and they've been so generous and gracious with us that they've letting us use their land. We have an agreement with them, but it took years. Like since I started on the team, which was 8 terms ago, this has been a challenge, is trying to put the track, and more so especially when Adam joined the team. So it's a huge feat. Land acquisition is not easy for large construction projects.
I could see that.
Absolutely. And I mean, there were other challenges too, I'd say. I mean, that was definitely the single largest and took up the majority of our time and energy, but it was also like quite difficult to get our procurement done. We found a lot of trouble trying to get our concrete that we needed because we were getting a lot of precast. But in the end, we ended up kind of getting it all to line up, and we got a nice partnership there. And yeah, and those were the main challenges.
Well, how will the skills you acquired during the difficulties prepare you for your future professionally and personally?
Sure. I can take this one first. I mean, I think a lot of what we developed by getting the land and by getting the designs and going through all the communications and everything like that really helped my soft skills. I've learned a lot about how you can follow up with people with emails, just simple stuff like that, or how you can cold call different companies to get like information you need. I also learned a lot about working with other people on my own team and people from different backgrounds. So not everyone's on the infrastructure team that we work with, obviously. So it's really important to be able to kind of take the work that you've been doing and get it into a kind of word it in a way that other people can understand. Yeah, and I've also learned a lot of leadership skills by being the lead the last term, that like sometimes you have to just change your plans really fast and come up with new things, and all while trying to make sure that everyone's happy and enjoying what they're doing. So yeah. Ben, do you want to go?
The question.
Oh, so what are the skills you acquire prepare you for your future professionally and personally? So during your difficulties, probably got some skills, or just in general during your experience.
Yeah. I think just the whole aspect of starting a project from its inception to its completion, it's always such a weird thing to think about, because when you go on a co-op, oftentimes you don't get those opportunities. You just work in specific phases, or you're helping out project managers and stuff like that, like especially for civil engineering co-ops. So starting a project from its inception and just trying to figure it out on your own with not too much help, like especially being the lead of the team, sometimes it feels like, well, for this project, like I'm the top, I'm supposed to know, and I don't even know. So we're all just trying to like figure it out together, which is scary but really cool. And I think that's really going to help me on later on in life, in my career, where I'm going to be doing similar, well, not maybe similar projects, I don't know, but similar in the type where in all the aspects of like what we had to do with this project, if you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
in that regard, I think it parallels nicely with my career, and then those skills that I've learned will help me out there.
Mhm. What excites you about Hyperloop and Hyperloop community?
All right, I can take it. I mean, I think the whole idea of the Hyperloop is just something completely new and really innovative, and just like an idea that could just change the way that everyone lives their lives. So I think because it's such a big idea and such a big goal, the people who are behind it tend to also be the type who really just strive for the top, strive for greatness, and don't really like to settle for much less. So yeah, I think the Hyperloop community is a great place to like learn from each other. Everyone's doing really impressive things, and
Mhm.
even though we're all kind of working on Hyperloop, everyone's kind of got a different approach. Like everyone's just trying to figure out how they want to do it. There's no true way to do it yet necessarily. So everyone's trying
Yeah.
to figure out their own path. And so I think it's really interesting to see how everyone's getting there.
Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of drifted away from a competition type space to more of just a community of engineers and innovators trying to propel this technology, especially since the competition has disbanded. I know with like the CHC, it's more meant to just bring people together and bring technology together and ideas together and showcase that. And the competition is just like a fun thing, you know? And I really like that about Hyperloop is that, you know, we've been talking with European teams and teams across Canada, other schools in Ontario, some American teams, things like that. And it really just feels like everyone's trying to work together to just help prepare technology or propel technology in this space. I think that's what's really cool about it.
Well, for the next question, what is a memorable story from your Hyperloop experience?
Hmm.
Go for it.
This one's dumb, but if Christina ever sees this video, one time she asked me what a rubber washer was. It's a super legitimate question, but she's so embarrassed by it, and I always bring it up when I get the chance because it embarrasses her, and I find that hilarious. And if she's gonna message me and be upset that I said it, but I said what I said.
Yeah, she probably will watch this.
Make sure you see.
So I think one funny thing I remember is in my first term on Waterloop, we were really focusing on getting our materials for the track, so our like getting all the concrete and steel or the aluminum and everything. And we were kind of going at this approach of just trying to see if we can get sponsorships to basically offer us the materials as young engineering students working on such a cool project. And maybe we were a little naive that people would be quite so generous, but we kept pushing and just messaging different companies over, and well, not the same ones, but new companies over and over again. And so that was a really humbling experience, but it brought us together in how difficult it is to get something done like that.
Mhm. Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I thought for sure we'd get some money, or
Yeah.
we got nothing.
Oh,
Actually, no materials from any of the companies, but we managed to secure school like endowment funds and things like that, which allowed this project to happen.
Yeah.
yeah, well, that's good. So for the next question, how will Hyperloop change infrastructure? What do you think?
Okay. You want to go for it first, or you want me to?
You mean like the infrastructure like that we're working on, or just infrastructure in general?
It can be both. Anything you want to add on.
Well, I think the cool thing about being on infrastructure is, although it's like when you're working on the pod per se, and you're like the mechanical team or electrical, are. You're all working together. But then the infrastructure team is isolated. It sounds bad, but it's not, because you have so much design freedom, right? We're not really dependent on the pod, and the pod's not dependent on us. We kind of have to like design our own thing and then make them work together. So Hyperloop could change infrastructure in just as many ways as infrastructure could change Hyperloop, if you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But then the whole like way we could do the infrastructure is just totally up to us. You know, like you got above ground or below ground, and then how the system actually is going to work. There's no standard for it, so there's so much freedom, which is really cool. I'll give a little bit of insight into one thing we're working on. So one of our long-term goals at Waterloop, or like in the 5-year vision, is to have a full-scale demonstration. And we're looking into like designing and researching that full scale. And one of the things we're looking at is if we can get the pod to have connections on 3 axes, so that the track tube itself can just be completely hollow and it doesn't actually have to run along a track. It just runs the walls of the tube on 360 degrees, but just on 3 points of contact. So that's something I think is interesting, because all we've seen right now is you just have a single rail going along the tube, and that's the way it runs. That's how it runs on the track. So just in that regard, we're completely shifting. So yeah, there's just a lot of design freedom.
Yeah, totally. And I think like from a more like macro perspective of Hyperloop in general, like the idea of having some kind of transportation system that it can move you at airplane speeds without requiring an aircraft, and having these lines almost like train lines just fundamentally changes how we see our cities and how we live our lives. So maybe it's possible in the future that instead of just having to build suburbs like we do today, where the cities just go on and on and on, and it's all dependent on car traffic to get people around, which, as we've seen in the last few years, is pretty difficult. I mean, managing traffic is a real challenge that cities face. I think Hyperloop can fundamentally change that idea, that maybe instead we just want to be in several urban centers along the line, or maybe we want to have more of a network kind of going out in different directions from the city, so that people can live in more urban communities and get into the city when they need. So yeah, I think there are many opportunities that it presents. We've never really had the ability to move that fast and to move people or goods. That's another big part of it. So yeah, the opportunities are massive.
Well, for the next question, do you think that you'll see the first Hyperloop transportation? If so, when do you think this will happen for the future?
Well, if we achieve our 5-year goal, then in 5 years, the idea is to be able to put people in a pod and have that pod. It's not going to be a long tube, but it'll be a tube nonetheless, and it'll demonstrate all that we've accomplished and all that we can accomplish, which would be really cool. And in terms of like actual Hyperloop, that will just become a standard thing. Honestly, who knows? There's a lot of red tape with these kind of things, and it's an unfortunate thing, because it just prevents really cool things from happening. But there's so many people working hard in this space that I'm confident things will progress.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of companies out there, not just student design teams, that are working really hard on it. There's also a lot more capital and funding being put into projects like the Hyperloop, especially with kind of the sustainability goals around climate change that we've set. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but until we see it, who knows?
Yeah. What are some unsolved challenges when it comes to Hyperloop that you wished were talked about more currently or in the future, you think?
Yeah, that's a good one.
the whole thing. uh,
Yeah, I mean, it's like a very complex system.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of safety challenges out there
Mhm.
that, I mean, within the Hyperloop community gets discussed, but kind of outside of the Hyperloop community, I feel like it's potentially not the biggest factor. Everyone gets very kind of centered in on like, oh, you can get from here to here in this many hours, which is really just the product of everything. But
Mhm.
having people moving through a vacuum tube is very difficult in terms of having
Yeah.
like emergency exits, and maintaining that vacuum takes a lot of energy potentially, well, very likely. So yeah, those are a couple.
yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't want to pretend like I know a whole lot about the whole system, and my knowledge really just extends to infrastructure in general. But I think maybe just what is the best way to set up the infrastructure in general, because there isn't a best way and there's no standard for this kind of thing. So everyone working on like in infrastructure, on our team and all other teams, we're just kind of like, it's a question and we're all just trying to answer it, you know. Whereas I feel like when you're working on a different design team where it's really standardized, there's like a set goal you're aiming for, or you can like, there's the target and you're just throwing and you're trying to get close. But with infrastructure, you're just aiming at nothing and then hoping it lands on something. I don't know. Like
Yeah. I
it's
get that. Yeah.
yeah.
So for the last few questions, it's a persuasion to Hyperloop and CHC. So how does CHC help design teams like yours?
You wanna go?
Sure. So yeah, I think Ben mentioned it earlier too about since 2019 when the SpaceX competition announced that it wasn't going to keep running. I think a
Mhm.
lot of Hyperloop teams across Canada and the world really just kind of had this moment where they had to think about like, what is our place in the future? What should we work towards? And I think a lot of teams kind of started finding their way. And I think a big part of the Canadian teams finding their way was this idea of establishing our own conference. And I think it took a long time. There were kind of some earlier models to it that some things stayed like they were back then and some things changed. But I think having an established competition definitely makes Hyperloop I think it'll probably grow the space. Maybe more teams will pop up. And it also helps give teams more of a visible goal to work towards.
I think the best thing about CHC is that it just gets the word about Hyperloop up there better than
Yeah.
the individual teams could, because a whole like competition or like expo kind of situation um, just brings more awareness to what we're doing and attention to what we're doing, because it's cool. That's really it. And I think getting more attention to Hyperloop and people talking about it and learning about it will just help promote it and then help us innovate faster.
Mhm. For sure. What would you recommend to a new team who wants to build their own track, maybe in the future?
Find land. How to put it. Um, okay. One of the biggest issues I remember when being on the team early is we thought if we had this nice like thick technical document showing all the, like the calculations and
Mhm.
engineering jargon, like man, that this is gonna work. Everyone's gonna be like, wow, these numbers are so good. We sent it out to them, and then it got rejected right away. We like had to redo the whole for our whole first report. It was just like, it was crap. Was it good? It was a great one in my opinion, but you have to know your audience. And
Mhm.
when you're trying to make a project like this happen, it goes with the red tape thing I was saying earlier. There's a lot of red tape, and you need to appeal to those parties. So basically just know your audience. When you're trying to push things through, you need to just tell them what they want to know, and they're going to trust you with the rest. So you don't need to tell them the numbers like that. You just need to tell them and let them apply to them and how it affects them. I think that would have saved us a lot of time at the start. Maybe a term or two's worth of time, but you live and you learn.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, that was mostly before my time, but I think the land thing is big. Make sure you start kind of really, really early. I mean, even if it feels like there's a lot you got to do first, don't underestimate how much time and energy it takes to secure land for something like this, especially as a student team. And and also really leverage the university. I think we didn't realize how much kind of support we could get from them on a project like this, which in hindsight we should have known, but we kind of figured out how much kind of support we could get and how many people were willing to help.
Yeah, I think feeding off that again, like at the start, we thought if we just reached out to all these companies, they'd be chomping at the bit to give us materials and funding because, cool project, right? But cool engineering project, but it was a little naive. we like applied for grants and endowment funds at the university. We had more money than we knew what to do with. Everyone was trying to give us money because it's like promoting a school thing. So leaning on the school was something you should do. Something we didn't do for no reason.
Yeah, those are great tips. Thank you.
No worries.
So second last question. If you were to advertise involvement in the Hyperloop community to a new individual, what would you tell them?
Like for an individual to join a team or to hear about?
Well, yeah, join a team or compete, I guess, join CHC or just Hyperloop in general. Maybe they're just interested but didn't join.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say go for it. There's no reason not to. If it turns out to be not your thing, then I mean, there's only one way of finding out. But I think the odds of you finding it to be a really exciting thing to work on and a really exciting group of people to work around are pretty high. There aren't that many design teams out there that you can choose that are really doing something like, I mean, maybe that's just my opinion because I'm on it, but really something quite as innovative and just cool as the Hyperloop. So go for it. Find out if your university has a team. If not, either you start one or reach out to CHC. Just try to get a part of it.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about working in Hyperloop is that it's never really been done before. Like it's untouched and there's no standards for it. Which I think that just really sets it apart from other teams and other things that you can do because you have just so much design freedom. And being in civil engineering, that's just something that attracted me to it. It's just having that freedom and designing something from the ground up, it feels,
Yeah.
Well, for closing remarks, what would you like to tell the audience of this interview or viewer?
Join Waterloop.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, absolutely. Join Waterloop, join your own team. Just
that's what I would say. In something. It doesn't have to be Waterloop, Hyperloop, but Hyperloop is pretty awesome. I'm a little biased. But don't be afraid to get involved. I waited till my second year to get involved, which was cool, but honestly, I should have done it earlier. I think people might be a little too scared because school's hard and they don't want to spend time on something else because they have too much time to spend in school. Like, you'll be fine. You learn so much from doing extracurriculars, like design team wise, that co-ops in school just can't provide for you. And that's important. So just getting involved thing is the main thing. Anything that you're interested in, get involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Just if you're a university student right now and maybe you're curious about Hyperloop or another one, just go for it. I mean, I was unsure kind of for a lot of the reasons Ben said. I mean, engineering's a tough program. You got a lot of time that you're spending on assignments, but I mean, I think that it really turned out to be true that when you're kind of trying to balance different things, you got different things that you're working on. Like you just kind of find a way to get into a groove with it. And I found that Waterloop's really good at actually keeping me focused. It helps me like build my schedule. It helps me keep my sights on what's important. And yeah, and I've just learned a ton.
Well, that's it for all the questions and interview. So thanks guys for coming and answering the questions.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
No, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
No worries.